Oh, and welcome to another episode of Diver Gold Coin Dealer. Although probably should change it to Diver Coin Dealer. Doesn't have the same razzmatazz, but it's probably the truth these days as I deal with a more diversified range of coins, banknotes, and stamps. I think I'll stick with it. It's fine. So what have I been up to? Well, not a lot really. I did go to an auction, not an auction, an antiques fair, and it raised more questions than answers. I must admit, I am not a fan of going to fairs. Full stop. For those of you who know me, I've banged the drum about being in business 10 years, or coming up for 10 years, a lot. It's something I'm kind of proud of, but not many people get beyond 3 years. So to do 10 is a wonderful achievement. But I've never been to a coin show, coin fair. Don't really do antiques fairs. I'm more of a I'll buy things at auction at home in the comfort of wearing my shorts and having a coffee kind of guy. I probably should go to a live auction house just to document it. I don't mind an antique shop, but I ended up getting a message from a good friend of mine. He just said to me, he's like, I'm going to this show. Do you want to come? And I just went, yeah, go on then. What's the worst that can happen? It was a special form of purgatory for me. Um, there was probably over 1,000 people in the main concourse, and I, as someone who struggles with sensory dysregulation on occasions, it's gotten a lot better since my sickness, but I didn't know if I was in a war zone or not. Although part of that was due to the fact that there was a couple of stalls that were selling very naughty items, including unbarred knuckle dusters, which I believe are illegal, but pick the hills you choose to die on and all that. So yeah, let's talk about it. Did I pick up any deals? Did I get my pants pulled down? Combination of both. I think I walked away from that fair at about break even. So I spoke with 4 dealers. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna insult or denigrate any of these dealers. By the way, I understand that everyone's got to make a living, and where I've been in the business a long time, I kind of come to the conclusion that my special power in business is valuation of things. And most people are not that way inclined. They buy something, they slap a price on and hope it sells. And then if it doesn't sell after a prolonged period of time, they reduce the price. I'm at the thick and fast end of the business where I want it in and I want it out. I want it turned over. I want to know what my margin is before I bought it. And not everyone is like that. But I did deal with 4 dealers. Um, of various scale and stature. I don't think any of them dealt on social media like myself. I don't think any of them were particularly interested, and that's fair enough. So the first dealer, I asked him about an old pound banknote, the one with the Parliament building on the back, the white, brown, and green one. Really nice notes. It wasn't the best of notes, and he just quoted me 120. Now that's kind of hard to get an idea of if it's worth 120. If it's pristine, it's probably worth a lot more. However, this note wasn't fantastic. And I went, I was like, crazy price. I think I said that. I need to kind of learn to keep myself in check sometimes. I just went, no, not a chance. And he went, well, how much do you put on it? And I went, well, I wouldn't pay more than 60, 50, 60 for it. And if I was selling it, probably aiming for like 80, I'd say. I was like, don't get me wrong, I'd have to sit down and go through it to work out the value because it is condition contingent. And I said, he went, okay, fair enough. You know, so I went to him. I was like, well, maybe we could do some business on some other things. And I come across these USA Confederate notes. There was 9 of them, and he quoted me 5 a pop. And I knew they probably were fake. I just had the idea. I was like, if they're not fake, I just need one not to be fake, and I'll make my money back. Practically, they were all fake. So I took a punt on it. It didn't come off. That's part and parcel of my job. You know, there's times where I will punt a lot of things, knowing that in the grand scheme of things, enough is coming in that I can take a chance on it. I can't remember where I put these notes. Oh, actually, tell a lie. I was looking at that side. So these, not my finest moment. But thinking back, I think that dealer probably knew, and he just saw money signs. So now I've actually got some real ones of these. As my expert always tells me, look at the ink signs. Oh, see if the ink is kind of live. None of these have got live ink. It's, yeah, they're blatant copies. But where I was suffering from sensory dysregulation, I was like, take a punt on it. If it's a loss, it's a loss. I can keep it in the wall of shame. I do keep non-legit things as curiosities. So £45 for some Monopoly money. Fantastic. Not really selling my channel, am I? So I bought these. Wasn't right. I did have a look at his knockgout, but I come to the conclusion that I'm not going to call him a chancer. I think that's wrong. I think I've got respect for anyone who goes out there and tries it, but I think his pricing was it was batshit crazy, let's be honest. I asked him about some silver certificates, and bear in mind these silver certificates were well loved, very well loved. And to put in perspective, well loved silver certs, when I can get them, I try and pay £2 a cert, and I'll sell for £3 a cert. That's kind of where I'm at on it. They're very hard to find at that price point. I probably will come up to £2.25 if it was offered. But he quoted me 25, and I just went, there's no more discussion to be had here. I saw him sell a crown, a Cooper nickel crown. So I pinged off 500 of them for a face, which is 25 pence for those who don't know. I probably could get 50p, pound if I'm pushing it, although I think it's kind of taking the biscuit that £3 he was charging people. I don't think that's a good thing for the hobby or the community. That stuff he would have paid nothing. Now I understand that people got to pay bills. That's fine. You know, I don't have a problem with that. I'm not going to judge people for making a crust, but he was just on the higher end. He did have some nice stock though. But I just come to the conclusion very quickly, and with my sensory dysregulation, I was like, I'm not even going to bother going through these because it's not worth my time. And I was getting a bit uncomfortable with the amount of people that were penning me in to this corner. So yeah, that was dealer number one. I think he was quite knowledgeable, but just his pricing was insane. Now, dealer number two, it was a husband and wife team, and I wasn't too impressed with them whatsoever. So I was talking to them, just going through their stock, just rummaging through as you do. Went through their banknotes, went through their silver coins, and as soon as I said I was in the trade and I was just looking for something potentially for my collection, I felt like the lady, the woman out of the partnership, she just completely stonewalled me after that. And I just went, I'm not going to buy anything from you whatsoever. You know, I've gone from being someone who might buy something for me, and they had some nice banknotes. Like if I spend £10 on a banknote because I want it for my collection, that's by the by. I'm not really putting a financial goal on it. That's not a problem, but I didn't want to deal with that. And I find that's very telling. Like if you stop talking to someone because they're a professional or they've been doing this themselves, it doesn't bode well for your business. You know, if it means you're not going to get a sale because your things are priced too highly, that's fair enough. But you got to play the game a little, and you got to kind of interact with people. At least that's my viewpoint. So didn't really have much else to say about them. Their silver was insanely expensive. Their banknotes were, the same. So they had a 10-ounce panda that caught my eye, 25 quid. So I'm looking at it. I was like, is that an official Chinese panda? Turn it over. It's from an alternate mint. It's vintage from an alternate mint in the States. And I just went crazy. Absolutely insane price. I don't know if they sold anything throughout the day. I would be shocked with both the pricing and the attitude, but maybe I just misread the signals. Maybe because of where I was in that time, I got it a bit wrong, but I got a really weird feeling off that lady. So I then went to another stall. There was a gentleman who had these. He was quite cool. I quite liked him, although I had two very opposing interactions with him. So he had those like £1 notes. There was 18 of them. I ended up buying them because I thought he was fairly priced before I even asked to haggle. I thought, yeah, if I'm going to do this, I'm gonna haggle properly. I just said to him, I was like, there's 18. What can you do for me? What can you do for me? Where are we at? And he quoted me a price, and I thought he'd come down lower than he should have. And he just said to me, he's like, I like to turn things over. And I went, okay, I'm getting bored with you. I looked at what else he had. So on the day, he was the cheapest in terms of the 1 ounce silver coins. He had them at 70. Unfortunately for him, spot had dropped. It'd fallen through the floor. But I found him quite a pleasant individual. So he had Brits, and then he had Queen's Beast 10 ounces for 700, and he had some kilo Queen's Beast completer coins for 2,250, which I thought were a bit of a steal. However, I'm looking at my finances and I've got a big auction coming up, and I thought might not be it. So I said to him, as I appreciate the notes, I might come back on the kilos. So I left the table. I then found another table. This was a strange experience. I really got on well with the people behind the table. They seemed like decent people. Their pricing I thought was again batshit crazy. So they had Hollandia shipwreck coins. They wanted 600 coin. I think they were Hollandia. They were one shipwreck, and they had the 20 for 20 coins. It was, you buy one, it's £60. You buy two, it's 55 a coin. And I just said to the lady, I was like, I'm in a trade, so I'm not your buyer, but you got some really interesting stocks. I wouldn't mind talking to you. So we end up talking, just looking at what they had. They're geared to part of the market that I wouldn't deal with. I personally, like I said earlier in the video, like to buy for fair price and sell for fair price. I don't think those prices were probably fair if you bought them. I don't know what their cost base is, and I don't know what they're paying either. So you need to remember, I've put out lots of videos where I'll say pricing's on the spectrum, and you want to just be on the balance of fairness. Now, if they're paying £500 for that coin and selling for 600, is that fair? Maybe. Does it matter? Maybe that's my own hang-up. I don't know. It could be just quite anal about justice or something. But I did say to the gentleman, I was like, that coin, he asked me, he's like, what would you be selling it for? I went, no more than 3, depending on condition. I was like, and I'll be aiming probably for 2 if I was buying. Now that's what I said to him, but equally, sometimes you say something on the spot and you've got a rough idea in your head, but you go back and you look at the data and you're like, actually, probably wouldn't even pay that. It might be 150, 120, depending on where the auction's at. So we shall see. I thought his pricing was very high, but he did seem like a genuinely nice person. He seemed like he cared about what he sold, and he did have a lot of the specialty stuff, like, for example, the Back to the Future car. Haven't seen one of those in a long time. I think he had a hoverboard. You know, he was importing things from the States. So all of this will go on the pricing, and he's got to add it on. So I can kind of understand some of the pricing, some of the other pricing, not so much. But as a whole, I found it quite a pleasant experience just to talk to these dealers, because they knew I wasn't going to buy from them. They could have just been like, can you move along and leave us alone, which another dealer had done. So I didn't mind dealing with them. So going back to the last story, so the gentleman I bought the banknotes off, I went back because I'm thinking about it in my head, and it's clocked as like, that's a £3,000 coin that the Queen's Beast completers. Okay, let's go back. Let's see what the condition's like. It's a £3,000 coin to the right buyer if the condition is perfect, for the record. So if he's got it at 2,250 and it's perfect, I'm snapping his arm off for it. However, because I'm under the VAT threshold, I've got to be very strategic in terms of what I buy, in terms of the margin, because I have pinch points in a year where I have to shut up shop because I've got no allowance left. So I tend to prioritize the auction lots these days, as you would have seen from my videos, because I just get more bang for my buck. So I go back, and this lady kind of accosts me, and I don't know what happened here. I got on with the gentleman. I said, look, let me have a look at the Queen's Beast. I was like, he knew I was a trader because I'd already told him, and I just said, let me look at it. I was like, I might be a buyer, I might not. It depends on the condition. And this lady just comes over and she's like, oh, I bought one of these. You know, like, these coins are perfect. And I just thought, is this like a sales patter? Are you on the same team or something? Do you have a vested interest in this? And she's like, oh, this is beautiful. And I just thought, just look, with respect, just leave me alone. I know what a perfect coin is. You know, I've been around a lot of metal. I've probably moved, well, I don't even know. Let's just call it millions and millions of pounds worth of coins. That's where I'm at. And that's not even that much in this industry, by the way. So I know that sounds a lot to most people, but it's not a lot of metal to move when you really think about it. There'll be dealers out there doing that yearly. You know, I've done that in 10. Um, and it just left a bit of a sour taste. I'm trying to sit there and I turn around and I say, well, it's not perfect. She went, yeah, no, these coins are perfect. I was like, no, it's not. And she's like, well, show me. So I pass it over to her. And she's like, oh, no, I see what you're talking about. And I went, no, I wasn't referring to that side of the coin. I was referring to the other side of the coin. So she turns it over and she's like, oh, where's the issue with it? And I said, well, it's not an issue. It's come from the mint like this, but it's not a perfect coin. So it was like a fleck of residue on the queen's nose, or around maybe the queen's neck. I think it's the queen's neck actually, and it just kind of not ruined the coin. It hadn't. You probably could clean it, but I'm not in that business of cleaning coins. And it was just a weird experience. I just said to the gentleman, I said, look, hold your guns on the price because it's probably worth, I reckon, about 2.5. I think you'll sell it for 2.50, but I'm not sure about this show because I don't really do shows, so you may be sitting on it. But overall, I think you're doing well. And he said, well, if it's worth 2.5, why do you not buy it? And I just said, because I don't have it in the VAT threshold to buy. Now, if that was a perfect coin, it's a completely different ball game because the numbers stack up. Because I reckon I'd have a buy for 3,000 and I'd buy it for 2.50. In fact, I'd probably buy both of them, but we're just not there. So wished him well and left. But I found that the lady who come over a bit, I don't know what her role was. Maybe she was just an over enthusiastic customer. Maybe to her they were perfect, but to me and my skilled eye, I just thought no. And I don't like that. Like if I'm a motivated buyer. Like I know what I want to buy. I don't need cajoling. I don't need any encouragement. If I like something, I buy it. But your behaviour will put me off from buying something. Maybe that's not a normal trait. I don't know. But yeah, that was my experience of going to an antiques fair. It wasn't the worst experience. I had a lot of fun. Also, an ice cream, fantastic. But yeah, I didn't really buy much. I lost money on these. I make mistakes, so you don't have to. I hope this video makes me my coffee. I'll make money on the notes, but overall, would I go again? Probably not. It doesn't bode well for coin fairs because I think there's probably going to be more people like that. One last interaction I had. There was a gentleman who sold war memorabilia, and he had an Operation Bernhard. I think it was either five. I think it was a £5 note, and I looked at it and he said, well, what are you looking to pay? And I went, well, I'm just looking for a price, really. One of those, I never understood that type of negotiation. You own the item, you tell me. And he went 300, and I went, no, not a chance. He's like, how much you got? And I went, look, we're so far apart, I'm not even going to put a number down because I don't think it's worth anywhere near that. It may be to the people who buy war memorabilia, but for someone who buys coins and banknotes. No, I did go back and I looked at pricing for those notes. I'm glad my gut instinct just told me to walk away because that number just seemed a bit insane. So anyway, that was my experience. I hope you've enjoyed the video and I shall see you on the next one. Bye.